You're muted. You're muted, Terry.
I've got everything on.
There we go. There we go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I was just saying that we're all so excited about either being on Zoom or here that I need to do some crowd control. However, now we've got the technology working, and I'm so glad you're here. Arthur, thank you for taking leadership of this service this morning. Go for it. We get the prelude now. No, we've already had the prelude. We were talking.
Well, good morning, everybody who's here and who's zooming in. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Lynchburg. We're glad you're here. Today we gather in the spirit of freedom and friendship. Whoever you are, whatever your beliefs, whatever your age, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we work together for justice, compassion, and peace, we also acknowledge with humility that our buildings are sitting on a site originally part of the Monacan Nation. My name is Arthur Rashap. I've been a member here for kind of a little over a year. Before that, I was a member for a couple of decades up in Charlottesville, where I was a member of what we call the Worship Associates. And we helped the ministers there plan and go on the Sunday services. So this is a pleasure for help us do that. So if you're with us for the first time, we're glad you chose to be here this morning to participate in the service for this church community we love. We would be happy to tell you more about our community during our virtual social time following after the service. If you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter and Friday email, the updates, please fill out the visitor card found in our welcome right in front of your seats. Or fill out the yellow card found in the back of the chair in front of you and place it in the offering basket during the offering. You may also wish to join our Facebook group. Sadly, Emily couldn't be here today. Her daughter has COVID. She hopes to be back in person next week. Our second annual Interfaith Craft Fair will be held at Peakland Baptist Church from 1 to 3 p.m. on November 13th. There will be a food truck and music. We are invited to have a table with crafts or other goodies to sell. All proceeds will go to the Interfaith Outreach. Bring out those crafts and homemade specialties. Reverend Terry leaves for South Carolina this afternoon. Have a good trip.
Thank you.
She will be gone for about 10 days, but will be available for emergencies. So now I invite us to release our worries about the world and our own lives as we enter into the service by taking some slow, calming breaths.
As we enter our time of worship, we join our hearts and minds as we share these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, O Spirit of life.
Our opening words are, we are all longing to go home, from Starhawk. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. A circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. A circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free.
I would like now to invite our young people to come join me. And I'm going to take just. Huh? Oh, excuse
The
me.
opening hymn.
I got all excited. Riley, do you want to come up here while we sing the hymn? Because I invited you up early, but we can sing it together. So let's all rise in body or spirit as we're going to sing a hymn now. Oh, I like your dress. As we share together, enter, rejoice, and come in. Come on up, y'all. Let's sit down here and look. Hey, thanks for coming up.
Open your
So I'm going to tell a little story about what it means to be a flame keeper. And I'm going to turn my microphone on first. So, how many people get a little nervous around fire? Yeah, sometimes me too.
I'm scared too. I can't experience it because I know that fire can burn everything.
That's true, but it also gives us light. And so we're going to learn about a community that everybody had a special light. So long time ago, there was a little town, a little village in Transylvania, which is all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's now in Romania. And the people of this little town didn't have a church. So they decided they wanted to have their own congregation, like we have our congregation.
You know that I learned of something in a podcast. The podcast is called Nature Nerds, and in one of them is about turmeric candles, and there's also something in this one of the humans that got that is friend to Nature Nerds, and it helps sometimes learns and helps about animals and doesn't know that doesn't speak animals, and they see that a lot.
So I'm really glad that you learned all of that on that podcast. And animals have a lot to teach people, but we also learn from each other. So this was a little town that really needed a church, something sort of like this. So the people all got together, and different people had different talents. And some people built strong stone walls, like on the other side of this wall are stones that make the building really strong. And other people chopped down some trees to make the beams for the ceiling and the doors. And then other people had the talent to make stained glass windows. And the last thing they did, this took a long time. Can you imagine chopping down those trees and hammering out pieces of stone to build walls? That's a lot of work. They must have really cared about each other to do all of that hard work to build a church for them to have in their community. So the very, okay, I'm,
Look at this tool.
you do have, well, they had maybe an invisible toolbox like you, but they also had a real toolbox where they were building walls and all sorts of fun things. The last day that they were building their building, they came in and painted the walls, all sorts of designs with flowers and beautiful cloths to go up at the front of the sanctuary. And our sister congregation that is in Transylvania, some of the women made this beautiful cloth and that beautiful cloth, because people are still making beautiful things. So when the people finished the painting, they were really tired. They were happy, but someone said, let's all go home and have supper together. So everybody went back to their homes, and one little girl named Zana, that's a familiar name, right? Or her name might have been Riley or Nora or any other name, but she and her father stayed at the church because they had brought their food. So they were eating, and Zana got really concerned that it was going to be dark when people came back to the church, and there wasn't any electricity. There weren't any lights like this
Yeah.
or air conditioning.
Yeah.
So Zana talked to her dad and said, how are people going to get back? It's going to be scary and sort of dangerous walking up the hill. And her father said, don't worry, because everyone has a light. So it got dark, and Zana's dad took her outside, and they could see all these little points of light, almost like stars in the sky, but they were coming up the hill. And you know what it was? Every family had a special lamp. And so they had their lamp lit, and all the little points of light eventually merged until there was a straight line of lights coming up to the church. And Zana said, you know, what is this? And her dad said, well, every family has a light that they bring. The church is its people. But yes, there are lights up there. But each of the people in the church had not only a lamp to put in the sanctuary, but they also carried a light within them. So Zana just couldn't understand that, but she saw that each family put their lamp on a lampstand until the church was bright. And after their service that night, as they were walking home, Zana said to her mother, well, what about this light? And her mother said, well, each of us carries in us the light of truth in our minds, and in our hearts, we carry the flame of love. So when you grow up, when you're not in church, you still have that search for truth and that love within you. And Zana said, well, what's going to happen when I grow up? And the mother said, well, when you grow up and have your own children, you can make more lamps, because there's enough light and love and truth to go around for everybody. And then you and your children will be the flame keepers to remind people of the love we all carry in our hearts. And so today, you're going to go to your classes in just a second, or maybe more than 1 second. And we're going to sing a very special song that someone in our congregation wrote for you.
Before we sing the song, I want to tell you something so gross. It's about garbage. It's about...
So can you tell me that after the service? Because I want to hear what you have to say, but right now it's time for us to sing you to your classes. Okay? Great. So this is a special song written for you and all our young people in this congregation. And as I light your chalices to take to your classes, we will sing to you.
With you,
Thank you. Each week, we take an offering of our gifts to support the work of our congregation, not only within these walls, but also in the larger community. And so, as you are so moved today, I invite you to give generously for the work we share together. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. Thank you.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
You I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. It is our practice in our community to share together the breadth and depth of our lives. And so, if in love, we hold up all that is our life, the loss that are part of our lives, and those things that we choose to have as part of our lives because we care about other people. We care about those who are vulnerable. And so today, we ask for strength, for vision, for commitment, to do more than talk about our belief in working for justice. We want to do more that shows that we do indeed live love in the world. May we find in this community strength to bear the grief, the sadness, the difficulties in our lives, as well as the commitment that our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to claim, to be change agents in the world. And despite all of this, may we live with hope and trust and possibility for the potential of love, justice, hope, and peace to thrive in this community, in Lynchburg, in our nation, and our world. We have an important message. May we remember that and live it. In the name of all that is holy, amen. This month, we've been talking a lot about belonging, and I was feeling very aware of all the things that were shared in joys and concerns this morning, and how important it is for every human being to have a community where we can just lay out the ragged and rough stuff, as well as the joys in our lives. Arthur and I were talking this week, and we decided to maybe have more of a conversation about this, because belonging, particularly in this day and age, is so essential for us to have strength to keep going some days. So I wanted to share a little poem by the Reverend Karen LeBlanc. This isn't just a place of worship. It isn't just a fellowship of like minds. This is our church, our congregation, where we are building the beloved community, where we are opening ourselves to each other, where we can trust and love, rise and fall together. This is where we feel safe. This is where we know we are welcomed. This is where we belong.
You know, Terry, the story you told to not just the children, to all of us and so on, about that inner light. And for the past couple of years, that inner light has kind of been restricted or dimmed because of everything that's been going on and so on. And I guess for most of it, it feels like we can turn that light back on and so on. So belonging is one way to do it, it seems to me. But I'd like to ask you, what do you think some of the challenges are into recharging with others?
Well, I think I've talked to a lot of people in the last 2 years and had my own experiences of feeling isolated during the pandemic. And I think that time has helped or pushed a lot of us to reconsider, who do I want to be with? Do the people that I've been spending time with prior to the pandemic, do they have the same values that I now have? I mean, your values may not have changed much, but what we've seen in the world in the last 2 years has really made a lot of us reconsider. I had a long conversation with a good friend last night, and she's reconsidering some of her friendships. You know, in a sense, we all had to deconstruct aspects of our lives, and we're reconstructing, which, you know, in normal life, we might do in a very leisurely fashion, but the pandemic has sort of jump-started that movement. The reality is that at this point, because of changes in our society, in our politics, in our social structure, we all need to think about, where can I belong that I feel safe and supported? One of the things I started thinking about the other night was a reading that I found in the hymnal that really speaks to our interconnectedness and supporting and helping people feel safe. It's actually number 568, but I just want to quote a little bit of this poem by Marge Piercy. Connections are made slowly, Sometimes they grow underground. Then she goes on to encourage us, weave real connections, create real nodes, live a life you can endure, make love that is loving, keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in, a thicket and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us, interconnected. It also made me think about, there are all these wonderful things that I normally wouldn't read about that pop up on Facebook. And one was about the largest tree structure in the world is the quaking aspen forest, where this mountainside of trees that are completely interconnected, communicating with each other. And that's perhaps one thing that we're all longing for, is to feel that we are interconnected in a way that we can trust and feel safe. So
So maybe you could say a little more about how this congregation and so on can help facilitate that coming together.
right, I think we also want deep connections to happen quickly, and they don't. It takes time. And I think in our congregation, we might find that belonging or connecting looks like play. It looks like having lunch together. It looks like being on a committee, even though some of us get tired of long committee meetings. It means being in a group where we really talk about deep and meaningful things. So, and it means play, going out and doing things. So at different times, what we want and need may look different. So one of the things that our leadership has really talked a lot about is, how do we help make sure that we're all included? So as messy as being on Zoom and in the sanctuary can feel like, there are other options for us. We can do live stream, but then I wouldn't be able to see everybody's faces in live time. And, folks who are in other states couldn't experience our service together. And so no matter the glitches, or if the candles work right, or whatever happens, we have made a commitment to each other that we want to be present. And for me, that says something really important about our congregation and who we want to be together. And of course, as things evolve and open up again, we're going to need to be talking with each other more, because communication is going to be increasingly important. So talking to a board member or to Courtney or me, we want to know what people want and need.
So a little more structurally, I know when I came here, I looked around and said, how do I get a little more involved with what's going on? And I found a discussion group, which I really love. I think it's wonderful, and hopefully some more will join in, because there's lots of things to discuss of that particular way, and it's a structure.
And I remember you came to the picnic a year ago, and I introduced you to Finnis and blamed him on getting you connected.
I congratulate him.
Yes.
But what are some other things maybe in the wind or ways that people could look at getting more involved, both with the congregation, but also with members of the congregation?
Right. So I'm sure you've seen announcements, and I've talked a bit about in the next few weeks, we'll be inviting people to join a Soul Matters small group. And these groups give participants a chance to build friendships with a small group of people. Another aspect of these groups is that it gives us a space to explore questions that give us greater insight about ourselves. And so as people share, we're learning from each other, but we're also learning about ourselves. And for folks who are in one of the small groups, you get a packet of material each month to look at. And you don't have to read the whole thing. That would be a little overwhelming sometimes, but just find something that sparks your interest. It's a wonderful way to listen more deeply to other people and to feel like people are listening to you. And I know, Brianna, you've been a co-facilitator of one group, and I don't know if you have a few things that you might want to say. You want me to bring you a microphone? Or you're coming up here? Okay, thank you, John.
Sorry, I'm still not stable enough to stand up on my own. I started out as a co-facilitator. Now I'm a facilitator. And when I was asked to do it, I facilitated before groups, and you don't really get to participate because you're the facilitator. And I was told that this would be a different experience, that you actually get to be a participant. And so that is true. So if you're interested in being a facilitator, I would highly suggest it. It's you get to be part of the group, and it isn't hard. It is hard because the whole point of Soul Matters is you have to listen, and Unitarians like to respond and
Or debate.
or yes. And the hardest part about Soul Matters is, and to me, it's become a spiritual exercise, because you have to have deep listening. You invite people. We have a packet. We have a focus. You get to select what you want to do. There's a question for you to consider, and it's not a question that you answer. Unitarians like to answer things. This isn't something you answer, it's something you think about. And then there's a spiritual exercise, and there's a gazillion things to pick from. And you select two, and you bring them to the group, and we spend about 2 hours, and we listen, and we just ask who would like to go first. We kind of center, and then somebody will respond to the question. We can start with the spiritual thing first. And it's deep, deliberate listening. You check yourself, you don't respond, you just listen. And then we give gratitude for what was just said, and then I ask if somebody else wants to go next. And there's no order to it. It just when you're inspired to do it. So at the end of it, and it takes maybe about an hour, there's a time to respond, but it's not to respond to fix anything or to argue with anybody or confront anybody, or it's just, what did that stir in you? What did that bring something back to you? You might say, I thank you so much for saying that. That reminds me of this and such. And it has become a sacred space, a safe space. We have a covenant. We agree that the space is that space. It doesn't go, whatever is said in that group does not go outside of that group. And it allows for you to create deep and meaningful relationships that you don't have during coffee hour. You just say, hey, how's it going? And I happen to have a friend, she's right there, Carolyn. She's in my group, and I have yet to meet her. I've never met her in person. She's never been to this church as far as I know. But she and I have a deep relationship from our Soul Matters group. And what was really interesting to me is the way they wrote the curriculum. There are, typical Unitarian would take the summer off. So there were no packets for the summer. So I told the group, I said, well, we don't have any packets. What do you want to do? What do you mean, what do we want to do? We're going to meet. And I said, okay, what are we going to talk about? I don't know, but we are going to meet. And we did, because it has become so important to our group to hold that space on the last Wednesday of the month, that they chose to meet during the summer. And so we're excited because we now have a focused belonging for this month, and we're going to be back to exploring spiritual things and our deep and meaningful listening. And Carolyn, if you would like to respond in any way of how it has been to be a participant with actually, when I started, there were 2 people I'd never met in person. I've now met the other one. But to be able to connect with people you don't even know in such a deep way, it's powerful. Carolyn, you'd like to respond?
Yes, I think Soul Matters is awesome. But first of all, I'd just like to thank you all for being available, letting me join you, because I have never been to your actual church, but I feel so supported and have really grown with you all during COVID and now. I've been to various small groups and reading groups and so forth, but just what Brianna said, that this Soul Matters group, you feel such deep friendships because you share, you learn from others, you add your part. And we've had 2 people who have moved, and when someone has to leave the group, you feel such a deep personal loss because each person seems to bring an insight and add a richness to the layers of what we're learning together. So I love Soul Matters. I have it in my calendar and I look forward to it. And I'm meeting with deep, close friends, I feel like. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank both of you. Now, I have actually met Carolyn in person. I drove to Alta Vista, right, Carolyn?
Yes, indeed. We got to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So this is one way. Each of us need to find ways that we can really connect in deeper ways within our congregation, because all of our lives have, mountains and valleys, and it's important for us to know that we have a place where we can belong. Thank you, Brianna. There are a number of other things going on, ways that you can connect. So I invite you to read the Friday Connection, or talk to somebody in the congregation in leadership. Yeah.
Terry, when we talked this week about belonging and the totality of how that works in the UU congregation and so on, you mentioned that when you first became a UU back in 1990, there were three fundamental words, which are freedom, reason, and tolerance. Okay, and since then, I think you've had thoughts about inclusion and how that has grown and so on. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, I think this whole concept of belonging has really, I've been thinking about this for a number of years, but the triad of words when I first joined a UU congregation, freedom, reason, and tolerance. They're good words, but the understanding of tolerance has shifted since I became a UU. And we've got new words that signify inclusion in a way that the word tolerance doesn't. So for women, you know, members of the LGBTQ community, people of color, Native Americans, Indigenous people, you know, I don't want to be tolerated. I want to feel like I'm sitting at a banquet table with everybody. We're all sitting around the table together. So I think re-examining some of these words and what they mean today. I mean, even the concept of reason, when I became a minister at a congregation 25 years ago, you know, somebody would come in to visit and they would say, hello, welcome, where are you from and where did you get your PhD? Well, I mean, I think we're still people who feel like reason is important. We don't want to check our brains at the door, but we also want people to bring the whole of themselves. So we need the heart as well as the intellect. And certainly reason is important. Understanding science and the intellect, but understanding accepting other forms of intelligence is important too. And then the concept of freedom, I think sometimes we use affirm freedom to the extent that we feel like we can say and do anything we want to in our congregations. But there comes a responsibility and boundaries that are important with freedom, that, you know, just because we think something, we don't necessarily need to say it if it's hurtful to another person. So I think while we claim these words, I think we need to re-examine them at this point in our history to figure out how do we want to articulate what those three words mean, and are there other words like belonging that we might want to claim for ourselves?
You mentioned that this month includes September 11th, and the fact that you put that kind of together with the belonging thing and maybe a bigger picture even beyond church.
Right. And actually being in one of the small groups talking about belonging helped bring up some of these things. September 11th was such a trauma for our whole country that we felt like, okay, the country is joining together. I mean, I was walking with a woman whose husband, when September 11th happened, and her husband was one of the people who was locked down in the Centers for Disease Control because they thought the CDC might be a next target. You know, so, you know, I have lots of different thoughts about that, and being a friend of a Muslim American during that time, I kept saying, Rahana, I'll hide you if they come after you. So what do we mean by belonging in this country? You know, who's in and who's out? You know, if we move from the personal sense of belonging to the more corporate, community, nationwide sense of belonging, our nation has always struggled with who's in and who's out. You know, historically, there were times when Mexican Americans were considered white people, so they got to come in the country freely. And then, you know, 2 years later, when we didn't need labor, they were considered people of color and were not allowed in the country as easily. So I think the concept of belonging really calls us to think about our place in the larger community and what does it mean to act responsibly and to live love in the world.
No, I'm thinking that going back to the story again, the individual lights that in effect shine the path and so on. Well, our congregation is one of those individual lights. So by shining from ourselves, okay, for the congregation, we can shine to the larger picture.
Right. And how do we articulate what it means to be part of a diverse, multicultural, multi-religious community? When I was a kid, I learned this quote by Edward Markham, and I looked it up last night. It's heretic, it starts, he drew a circle to shut me out, heretic rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. So how do we draw those larger circles? I think that's really important because we're helping build not only our congregation, but our nation. You know, and that seems grandiose, but every person, every community that chooses to stand up for trans kids, who stands up for indigenous people, who stand up for the marginalized people, we can make a difference in our community and in the world. The question is, we've got to decide what kind of community we are longing for and that we are going to work to create so that all people feel like they belong. And I think on that note, I invite us to sing our closing hymn. Thank you, Arthur. It's in the teal hymnal, but Emily will have the words up. When our heart is in a holy place. Rise as you are willing and able.
share the silence of sacred space when the dawn of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Final benediction is these words. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving. May it be so. That was the perfect thing for her to play, wasn't it?